She stepped into the pristine gallery wearing simple jeans and a well-worn denim jacket, her curly black hair pulled back in a casual ponytail. The Chicago Fine Arts Gallery was known for its exclusive clientele and multi-million-dollar exhibits, its polished marble floors reflecting the carefully positioned lighting that showcased each masterpiece to perfection. Elena Alvarez paused at the entrance, taking in the space with a trained eye. She noticed the perfect sight lines, the way natural light mingled with artificial illumination, the strategic placement of sculptures to guide visitors through the curated experience. As an architect, she appreciated the thoughtful design almost as much as the artwork itself. A tall woman with immaculately styled blonde hair approached, her heels clicking authoritatively on the marble floor. Camille Hartwell, according to her name badge, wore a tailored black dress that whispered old money and breeding. Her smile, practiced and professional, didn't quite reach her eyes as she assessed Elena's casual appearance. "Welcome to Chicago Fine Arts Gallery," she said, her tone suggesting Elena had somehow wandered in by mistake. "The public viewing hours begin tomorrow at noon. This evening is our private showing for collectors and invited guests." Elena smiled, used to such assumptions after 15 years at the top of her field. "I'm here to view the Richardson collection," she said, her voice carrying the quiet confidence of someone who never needed to prove herself. Camille's eyebrows rose fractionally. "I see. And your name?" "Elena Alvarez." Camille consulted the tablet in her hands, scrolling through what Elena assumed was the appointment list. The slight frown that appeared told Elena everything she needed to know. "There seems to be some confusion," Camille said, her voice louder than necessary. "The Richardson collection is being shown exclusively to qualified buyers. Perhaps you misunderstood the nature of today's event." A middle-aged man in an expensive suit glanced over from where he was examining a large abstract canvas, his expression hovering between curiosity and disdain. "My appointment was confirmed yesterday," Elena said calmly. "I'm representing a client who's interested in acquiring several pieces for their new headquarters." "Your client?" Camille echoed, not bothering to hide her skepticism. "And who might that be?" Before Elena could respond, a voice cut through the quiet murmur of the gallery. "Is there a problem here, Camille?" Marcus Wellington, the gallery's owner, approached with the confident stride of someone accustomed to command. In his early 50s, he exuded the polished sophistication of old wealth, combined with artistic sensibility. His steel-gray hair was perfectly styled, his navy suit clearly bespoke. "This woman claims to have an appointment to view the Richardson collection," Camille explained, her tone making it clear what she thought of this claim. "For a client." Marcus turned his appraising gaze to Elena, taking in her casual attire and the simple leather messenger bag slung across her body. His smile was thin and dismissive. "I see. And who is your client, Miss Alvarez?" "Elena Alvarez. I'm representing Horizon Global." Something flickered in Marcus's eyes, recognition perhaps, but his professional training kept his expression neutral. "Horizon Global, the development company?" "Yes," Elena replied. "They're finalizing design plans for their new North American headquarters, and they're interested in establishing a meaningful art collection for the space." Marcus's demeanor warmed by the smallest degree. "I see. However, we typically work directly with the principals on acquisitions of this magnitude. Perhaps your employer would prefer to handle this personally." A small group of well-dressed patrons had gathered nearby, not bothering to disguise their interest in the exchange. Elena felt a familiar burn of frustration rising in her chest, but 15 years of navigating these waters had taught her to keep her expression neutral. "I'm authorized to make selections and acquisitions up to 8 figures, she said simply. "But if you'd prefer I take Horizon's business elsewhere, I'm sure there are galleries in New York or Los Angeles that would be more accommodating." A calculated risk, but one that usually paid off. Few gallery owners would turn away a potential commission of that size, regardless of the messenger. Marcus's professional mask slipped for just a moment, revealing a flash of uncertainty. "That won't be necessary. However, we do have protocols for serious buyers. The Richardson collection represents some of the most significant contemporary works to come to market in the past decade." "I'm aware," Elena said. "That's precisely why I'm here." Marcus seemed to come to a decision. "Very well. Jason will show you the collection." He gestured to a young man hovering nearby, clearly an assistant or junior employee. "However, I should warn you that these pieces start at 7 figures. The most significant works are priced accordingly." The implication was clear. He didn't believe she or her client could afford what they were about to see. "I understand," Elena said, refusing to take the bait. As Jason led her toward the private viewing room at the rear of the gallery, Elena heard Marcus murmur to Camille, just loud enough to reach her ears, "Alert security." Discreetly, Elena felt a familiar weight settle in her stomach. Even now, after all she had accomplished, she was still judged by her appearance, her gender, her ethnicity, always assumed to be less than she was until proven otherwise. The private viewing room was a stark white cube designed to focus attention entirely on the art. Jason, to his credit, seemed less concerned with Elena's appearance and more interested in the artwork itself. The Richardson collection spans 20 years of Jerome Richardson's career, he explained, his enthusiasm genuine. From his early experimental period through his mature abstract expressionist work. Elena nodded, studying a large canvas dominated by bold red strokes against a complex backdrop of blacks and grays. His work reminds me of Franz Klein, but with a more visceral emotional quality. Jason looked at her with surprise and newfound respect. Exactly. Most people immediately compare him to Pollock because of the energy, but Klein is a much more accurate reference point. As they moved through the collection, Elena took photographs of several pieces, making notes on her tablet. Jason grew increasingly animated as they discussed the merits of each work, clearly pleased to converse with someone knowledgeable about art history and theory. This one, Elena said, stopping before a massive canvas that seemed to capture the essence of a storm at sea through purely abstract means, would be perfect for the main reception area. The dynamism would contrast beautifully with the clean architectural lines we've designed. It's one of his finest works, Jason agreed, though at $4.5 million. It's also one of the most expensive in the collection. Elena made a note without comment, then moved to a smaller but no less powerful piece. And this would work well in the executive conference room. The subtlety requires closer viewing, which would be perfect for a more intimate space. Their discussion was interrupted by Marcus Wellington's return, accompanied by a security guard who tried unsuccessfully to appear casual in his positioning near the door. "Finding anything suitable for your client?" Marcus asked, his tone making it clear he still harbored doubts about the legitimacy of Elena's interest. "Several pieces, actually," Elena replied, unfazed. "I'm particularly interested in Tempest Undone for the main reception area, Fractured Light for the executive conference space, and potentially Convergence Theory for the central atrium. Though I'd need to confirm the dimensions would work with the sight lines we've established." Marcus's eyebrows rose slightly at her specific references to the works and architectural considerations. "Those are three of the most significant pieces in the collection. Together, they represent an investment of nearly $12 million. "I'm aware," Elena said simply. "The budget for the initial art acquisition is $20 million, with an additional $10 million allocated for commissioned works." A ripple of whispers passed through the small group of patrons who had followed them into the viewing room, clearly interested in the unfolding drama. Marcus himself seemed momentarily at a loss for words, caught between his skepticism of Elena and the potential for a substantial sale. The impasse was broken by the arrival of a new figure at the gallery's entrance. Through the glass walls of the viewing room, Elena could see heads turning as a tall man with silver, streaked dark hair entered, his presence commanding immediate attention despite his unassuming manner. Rafael Alvarez moved through the main gallery with the quiet confidence of someone who never needed to announce his importance. At 62, he carried himself with the dignity of a man who had built something substantial from nothing. His simple but impeccably tailored charcoal suit a stark contrast to the flashier style favored by many of the gallery's patrons. Elena felt a complex wave of emotions at the sight of her father, love, pride, and a touch of frustration that his arrival would inevitably change the dynamic of her interaction with Marcus Wellington. Rafael approached the viewing room, and Jason quickly moved to open the door for him. "Dad," Elena said, surprised, "I didn't expect you to join me." Rafael smiled warmly at his daughter, then extended his hand to Marcus. "Rafael Alvarez, I hope I'm not interrupting." Marcus took his hand automatically, his expression shifting rapidly as recognition dawned. "Mr. Alvarez, we weren't expecting. It's an honor to have you visit our gallery." The change in Marcus's demeanor was immediate and dramatic. Everyone in the art world knew Rafael Alvarez, the self-made billionaire whose Horizon Global had transformed skylines across the world while maintaining an unwavering commitment to sustainable design and social responsibility. His personal art collection was legendary, featuring works from emerging artists alongside priceless masterpieces. "I was in Chicago for a conference and thought I'd join my daughter," Rafael explained, placing a gentle hand on Elena's shoulder. "She mentioned she was viewing some pieces that might work for our new headquarters." "Your daughter?" Marcus repeated, the color draining from his face as he turned to Elena with new eyes. "Ms. Alvarez is your daughter. She's also our chief creative officer and the lead architect for the headquarters project," Rafael added, his voice carrying a hint of steel beneath its warm tone. "Elena has full authority to make any acquisitions she deems appropriate." Her eye for how art interacts with architectural space is unmatched. The gallery had gone completely silent. Even the security guard who had been positioned near the door seemed to have shrunk back, suddenly fascinated by a spot on the wall. Mr. Wellington was just sharing his expertise on the Richardson collection, Elena said smoothly, unwilling to embarrass her father with the truth of how she'd been treated. Jason has been particularly helpful in providing context for the works. Rafael nodded, but his eyes, so like his daughter's, held a knowing look. He had not built a global empire without being able to read situations accurately. I'm glad to hear it. The Richardson pieces I've seen previously are exceptional. Marcus Wellington had recovered enough of his professional composure to seize the opportunity before him. Mr. Alvarez, it would be my personal honor to walk you through the collection. Perhaps we could discuss your vision for the headquarters installation over champagne. So we have a private lounge. That won't be necessary, Rafael said firmly. I trust my daughter's judgment implicitly. Whatever selection she makes will have my full support. Elena felt a warm surge of gratitude toward her father, whose faith in her had never wavered from the day she'd announced her intention to study architecture as a teenager. Even as she'd risen through the ranks of his company, he had been careful to give her the space to prove herself on her own merits. In that case, Marcus said, pivoting smoothly, perhaps Ms. Alvarez would like to discuss her selections in more detail. The pieces she's expressed interest in are truly extraordinary examples of Richardson's work. Actually, Elena said, her voice quiet but firm, I think I need to reconsider whether this gallery is the right partner for Horizon's collection. Our company values align with our actions, not just our words. We seek partners who demonstrate respect and professionalism consistently, not just when they recognize a potential profit. Marcus blanched. Ms. Alvarez, if there's been any misunderstanding. There's been no misunderstanding, Elena interrupted gently. From the moment I entered your gallery, your staff made assumptions about me based solely on my appearance. I was treated with suspicion and condescension until my father arrived. That's not the kind of business relationship Horizon seeks to cultivate. The silence that followed was absolute. Several patrons who had been hovering nearby suddenly found urgent reasons to examine distant artworks. Camille, who had moved to stand beside Marcus, looked as though she might be Elena, Rafael said quietly, perhaps we should discuss this privately. Elena considered her father's suggestion. Part of her wanted to walk away, to make a point about the consequences of prejudice and assumptions. But another part, the architect in her who could see the potential in raw materials, recognized an opportunity for transformation. I believe in second chances, she said finally, and in the possibility of change. The art in this collection is exceptional, and it would be a shame to let personal interactions prevent it from finding the right home. Marcus seized the opening like a drowning man grasping a lifeline. Ms. Alvarez, please allow me to personally apologize for any disrespect you experienced. It does not reflect the values of this gallery, and I assure you it will be addressed immediately. Elena nodded, her expression thoughtful. I appreciate that. Perhaps we can start fresh. Jason was providing excellent insight into Richardson's evolution as an artist. I'd like to continue that conversation while considering which pieces might best complement our architectural vision. The relief on Marcus's face was palpable, of course. Jason is one of our most knowledgeable associates. I'll leave you in his capable hands while I arrange for refreshments. As Marcus and Camille retreated, Rafael gave his daughter a look filled with pride. You handled that with more grace than I might have, he said softly. Elena smiled. I learned from the best. You always said the true measure of power isn't in making people fear you, but in helping them become better than they were. Rafael's eyes crinkled at the corners. Did I say that? Sounds very wise. You did. The day I graduated from architecture school, she squeezed his hand. Now, let me show you the pieces I've selected. There's one in particular that captures exactly what we're trying to achieve with the atrium space. As they moved through the collection with Jason, Elena felt the weight of the earlier confrontation gradually lifting. The young associate's genuine passion for the art and his respectful engagement with her ideas reinforced her belief that change was possible, that people could grow beyond their initial prejudices when given the opportunity. The incident at the gallery faded into the background as Elena immersed herself in the creative process, envisioning how each piece would interact with the architectural spaces she had designed. This was where she felt most alive, at the intersection of art and architecture, creating environments that would inspire and elevate the human experience. Later, as their black Tesla silently navigated the Chicago streets toward their hotel, Rafael broached the subject she had been expecting. It happens often, doesn't it? He asked, his voice carrying a sadness that made Elena's heart ache. People judging you before they know who you are. Elena gazed out at the city lights reflecting on Lake Michigan. Less than it used to, but yes, especially in certain circles, the art world, high finance, places where people still have rigid ideas about what success looks like. Rafael nodded slowly. I hoped my name would shield you from that. That the world would have changed enough by the time you entered it professionally. Dad, Elena said gently, turning to face him, your name has opened doors, but I've always wanted to walk through them on my own merit. And part of that journey is dealing with people's assumptions and proving them wrong. A small smile touched Rafael's lips, just like your mother. She never wanted special treatment either. The mention of her mother, gone now for over a decade, brought a familiar ache to Elena's chest. Maria Alvarez had been the family's moral compass, the one who had insisted that as their wealth grew, so too should their responsibility to others. What would she have done today? Elena asked. Rafael's laugh was soft and warm with memory. Oh, she would have been much less diplomatic than you. Probably would have bought the gallery just to fire everyone. Then realized that wasn't the right approach and ended up establishing a scholarship program for art students from underrepresented backgrounds instead. Elena smiled, knowing he was right. Her mother's first instinct had always been righteous indignation, followed quickly by constructive action. That's not a bad idea, actually. Which part? The firing or the scholarship? The scholarship. Maybe Horizon should establish a partnership with local art schools, create pathways for diverse voices to enter galleries and museums. Rafael nodded, his expression thoughtful. Draft a proposal. If it's solid, we'll implement it company-wide, not just in Chicago. The Tesla pulled up to their hotel, and as the veil had opened their door, Elena felt a renewed sense of purpose. The sting of her treatment at the gallery was still there, but it had been transformed into something productive, a catalyst for positive change rather than simply a painful reminder of persistent prejudice. In her hotel suite, Elena kicked off her shoes and pulled up the building plans for the headquarters on her tablet. The Richardson pieces she had selected would be perfect for the spaces she had designed, their energy and emotion complementing the clean, sustainable architecture that had become Horizon's signature. Her phone chimed with a message from Jason, the gallery associate, Ms. Alvarez. I wanted to apologize personally for your experience today. Your insights on Richardson's work were the most intelligent I've heard, and I'm embarrassed by how you were treated initially. I've taken the liberty of sending detailed information on some additional pieces I think would complement your selections. No pressure at all, just wanted to share. Thank you for your graciousness today. Elena smiled, typing a quick response. Thank you, Jason. No apology necessary from you. Your passion for the art speaks volumes. I'll review the additional information. And please call me Elena. She set her phone aside and returned to the architectural plans, making notes about placement and lighting for each piece. This was the world she had created for herself, where her vision and expertise were valued and her work spoke for itself. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new assumptions to overcome. But tonight she would focus on creation rather than judgment. As she worked, Elena reflected on how far she had come from the shy girl who had once hidden her sketches, afraid to show her dreams to the world. The path hadn't been easy, but every obstacle had strengthened her resolve. Every dismissal had fueled her determination to prove her worth through her work. The Chicago skyline glittered beyond her window, a testament to human imagination made concrete. Somewhere out there, the foundations were being laid for Horizon's new headquarters, a building that would embody their commitment to sustainability, community, and beauty. Elena's building. Her vision. No one could take that away from her, no matter what assumptions they made when they saw her walk through the door. The following morning, Elena arrived at the construction site for Horizon's new headquarters, the early Chicago sunshine casting long shadows across the vast skeletal framework that would eventually become a landmark on the city's skyline. She wore the same casual jeans as yesterday, paired with sturdy boots and a simple white button-down. Her only concession to her executive status was the platinum watch her father had given her when she was named Chief Creative Officer. A reminder, he'd said, that time was the most valuable resource they had. Construction workers nodded respectfully as she passed, many calling her by name. Unlike at the gallery, here her face was well known, her authority unquestioned despite her youth and casual appearance. Elena had made a point of knowing every crew leader, understanding their challenges, and respecting their expertise. In return, they gave her their best work and unvarnished opinions when they thought her designs needed refinement. Morning, Ms. Alvarez, called Michael Chen, the site manager, jogging to catch up with her. In his late 50s with salt and pepper hair and the weathered face of someone who had spent decades outdoors, Michael had initially been skeptical of the young architect's ambitious design. Over time, his skepticism had transformed into fierce advocacy for her vision. The structural team has some questions about the atrium supports. Got 'em in, of course? Elena replied, following him toward the central area where the soaring glass atrium would eventually rise. Is there a concern about the load calculations? Not exactly, Michael said, unrolling a set of blueprints on a makeshift table. It's about the positioning for the art installation you mentioned. The engineers want to be sure they're reinforcing the right anchor points. Elena smiled, touched by the team's attention to her plans for the Richardson sculpture she had selected yesterday. Let me walk them through it. The piece is dynamic. It needs to appear as if it's suspended in motion, which means the support structure has to be virtually invisible. For the next hour, Elena worked directly with the structural engineers, sketching modifications and explaining the interplay between the art and architecture she envisioned. This was when she felt most in her element, collaborating with specialists who respected her expertise while contributing their own. Alvarez. Elena turned to find a young woman in business attire standing hesitantly at the edge of their impromptu meeting. She looked vaguely familiar, though Elena couldn't immediately place her. I'm Camille Hartwell from Chicago Fine Arts Gallery, the woman said, her confident gallery persona replaced by evident nervousness. I was hoping I might have a moment of your time. Elena excused herself from the engineers and walked toward Camille, his curiosity overriding the lingering discomfort from yesterday's interaction. This is unexpected, she said, keeping her tone neutral. What brings you to our construction site? Camille glanced around at the massive project, momentarily distracted by the scale of it. I wanted to personally apologize for yesterday. My behavior was inexcusable. Elena studied the woman, noting the genuine regret in her expression. That's appreciated, but unnecessary. You could have simply called. I felt it needed to be in person, Camille said, squinting slightly in the morning sun. And I wanted to see it, the building you're creating. After you left yesterday, I researched your work. It's extraordinary. The compliment, delivered with what appeared to be genuine admiration, caught Elena off guard. Thank you. We're still in early stages here, but the framework gives you a sense of the scale. It's not just the scale, Camille said, looking up at the skeleton of what would become the atrium. It's the vision, the way you're integrating sustainable elements without sacrificing beauty. She hesitated. I studied architecture before switching to art history. Seeing your designs made me remember why I was drawn to it initially. The admission shifted something in Elena's perception of the gallery employee. What changed your path? A rueful smile crossed Camille's face. Insecurity, mostly. I had professors who made it clear they didn't think women had the right perspective for monumental architecture. I believed them. Elena nodded, understanding all too well. I had those professors too, and gallery owners, clients, contractors. But you didn't listen to them, Camille said. I listened, Elena corrected gently. Then I proved them wrong. It's harder, but ultimately more satisfying. Camille looked away, watching the construction crews at work. After you left yesterday, Mr. Wellington was upset. He made it clear that the gallery's reputation had been damaged, and that it was partially my fault. Her voice hardened slightly. But watching him suddenly transform when your father arrived, it made me see myself differently. I realized I've been playing into a system that judges people by the wrong metrics, that I've become someone I never intended to be. The raw honesty in her voice resonated with Elena. Recognition is the first step toward change. That's why I'm here, Camille said, turning back to face her directly. Not just to apologize, but to ask if you'd consider giving the gallery, giving me, another chance to work with you on the art installations. I've brought detailed information on several additional pieces that might complement the Richardson works you were considering. She hesitated, then added, and selfishly, I'd like the opportunity to see how you integrate them into this space, to learn from your process if you're willing to share it. Elena considered the request, weighing her lingering frustration against the genuine contrition and interest Camille was displaying. One of her mother's favorite sayings came to mind. When someone shows you they can change, believe them. It's the hardest thing humans do. I'm heading back to the gallery this afternoon to finalize my selections, she said finally. If you'd like to be part of that process, I'd welcome your perspective. The relief and gratitude on Camille's face was evident. Thank you. I won't disappoint you. I'll hold you to that, Elena said with a small smile. Now, I have a meeting to finish, but I'll see you at 3. I'll be ready, Camille promised, a new determination in her voice. As Camille left and Elena returned to the structural engineers, Michael Chen raised an eyebrow questioningly. Everything okay, boss? He asked. Elena nodded, looking out at the framework of her building reaching toward the sky. Yes, just another opportunity to build something better than what was there before. Michael chuckled. Isn't that always the goal? It is, Elena agreed, turning her attention back to the blueprints. No, about those atrium supports. By the time Elena returned to the Chicago Fine Arts Gallery that afternoon, word of her true identity had clearly spread. The transformation in how she was received was both amusing and slightly disheartening. The same casual outfit that had marked her as an outsider yesterday was now the subject of deferential comments about her artistic sensibility and refreshing authenticity. Marcus Wellington himself waited by the entrance, practically vibrating with nervous energy. Ms. Alvarez, thank you so much for returning. I cannot express how deeply we regret the misunderstanding yesterday. Elena accepted his handshake with a polite smile. As I mentioned to Camille this morning, I'm willing to move forward if you are. The art is what matters here, not personal grievances? Absolutely, absolutely, Marcus agreed hurriedly. Speaking of Camille, she's prepared the private viewing room with all the pieces you expressed interest in, plus several additional works she thought might complement your architectural vision. Elena followed him through the main gallery, aware of the curious glances from patrons and staff alike. The whispers followed her. That's Elena Alvarez, Horizon Global, Rafael's daughter. The Chicago Beacon design was hers. In the private viewing room, Camille waited beside an impressive display. The Richardson pieces Elena had selected yesterday were prominently positioned, but they had been joined by several other works that demonstrated a thoughtful understanding of what she was trying to achieve with the headquarters design. Ms. Alvarez, Camille greeted her, professional but without yesterday's condescension. I've taken the liberty of arranging the works in relation to each other as they might appear in the different spaces you described. I've also included some information on emerging artists whose work might complement the established pieces, creating a dialogue between generations. Elena surveyed the presentation with genuine appreciation. This is thorough. You've clearly done your research. I stayed up most of the night studying your previous architectural projects and how you've incorporated art in them. Camille admitted. Your integration of Diego Rivera-inspired murals in the Mexico City development was particularly inspired. That was a passion project, Elena said, surprised by Camille's specific knowledge. The connection between public art and civic engagement has always fascinated me. For the next hour, they moved through the collection together, their conversation flowing more naturally as they focused on the art and its relationship to architectural space. Elena found herself impressed by Camille's insights once the younger woman allowed herself to speak from genuine knowledge rather than rehearsed gallery talking points. Marcus Wellington hovered nearby, occasionally interjecting with comments about provenance or investment value, until Elena gently but firmly suggested he might have other clients who needed his attention. Once he had reluctantly departed, Camille visibly relaxed. Thank you, she said quietly. He's been intense since yesterday. I can imagine, Elena replied, studying a smaller Richardson piece that captured the interplay of light and shadow. Tell me honestly, how long have you worked here? Just under a year, Camille admitted. My first job after completing my master's in art history. And do you enjoy it? Camille hesitated. Parts of it. I love being surrounded by extraordinary art, having the chance to research and understand the works. But the commercial aspect, the focus on wealthy clients, the emphasis on art as investment rather than cultural expression, it's not what I imagined. What did you imagine? Elena asked, genuinely curious. I thought I'd be educating people, opening their eyes to new perspectives through art, Camille said, a flush of passion animating her features. I envisioned working with public installations, community programs, making art accessible rather than exclusive. Elena nodded, recognizing the idealism that had once fueled her own career choices. Those opportunities exist, you know. Horizon has an entire division dedicated to cultural integration and public art initiatives. I've read about your projects, Camille acknowledged. The way you've incorporated local artists into commercial developments, created spaces that serve communities rather than just corporate interests. It's remarkable, it's necessary, Elena corrected. Art shouldn't be locked away in private collections or corporate headquarters. It needs to breathe, to interact with people from all walks of life. They continued discussing the selected pieces, but Elena's mind was working on another level, considering possibilities beyond the immediate transaction. By the time they had finalized the selections, 3 major Richardson works and 4 complementary pieces by emerging artists, she had made a decision. I'd like you to be our liaison for this installation, Elena said as they concluded their session, to work directly with my team on placement, lighting, contextual materials. If you're interested, of course. Camille's expression registered shock, then cautious hope. Me, Wellington would expect to handle a client of your stature personally? I'm not interested in what Mr. Wellington expects. Elena said simply. I'm interested in working with someone who has both knowledge and perspective, who can see beyond the investment value to the cultural significance of what we're creating. I don't know what to say, Camille stammered. Say yes, Elena suggested with a smile. It would be a project-based contract initially, but if it goes well, Horizon is always looking for talented people to join our cultural integration team. Understanding dawned in Camille's eyes. You're offering me a potential way out. I'm offering you a potential way forward, Elena corrected gently. An opportunity to align your work more closely with your values. What you do with it is entirely up to you. Camille straightened her shoulders, a new resolve evident in her posture. Yes, I would be honored to serve as liaison for the installation. Good, Elena said, extending her hand. I expect professional excellence and absolute honesty. If something in our design isn't working with the art, I need to know it. Understood. Camille said, her handshake firm. I won't let you down. As Elena left the gallery, purchases finalized and a new professional relationship established, she felt a familiar satisfaction. The same feeling she experienced when a challenging design finally came together. It wasn't about proving her worth to those who had doubted her. It was about creating opportunities for transformation, both of spaces and of people. Her phone buzzed with a message from her father. How did it go at the gallery? Elena smiled, typing her response. Got the art we wanted and possibly a new team member. I'll explain over dinner. Rafael's reply came seconds later. That's my girl. Always building something better. As her car navigated toward her hotel, Elena gazed out at the Chicago skyline, a testament to human imagination and perseverance. So many of those buildings had initially been met with skepticism. Their architects told their visions were impossible or impractical. Yet there they stood, reshaping the landscape and the lives of those who inhabited them. One conversation, one interaction, one building at a time. That was how lasting change happened. Not through grandiose statements or dramatic confrontations, but through the steady, persistent work of showing a different way forward. Tomorrow she would return to the construction site, continue bringing her vision for the headquarters to life. And perhaps, in some small way, the events of the past 2 days would ripple outward, creating space for others to be seen for their true worth rather than judged by superficial appearances. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough until such judgments were relics of the past. But it was a step, and Elena Alvarez had learned long ago that even the most monumental structures began with a single, well-placed stone. 6 months later, Elena stood in the soaring atrium of the completed Horizon Global headquarters, watching as the morning light filtered through the specialized glass roof. Designed to maximize natural illumination while minimizing heat gain, the Richardson sculpture Convergence Theory hung suspended in the vast space, its metallic surfaces catching and refracting the light in ever-changing patterns. It's even more beautiful than I imagined, said a voice behind her. Elena turned to find Camille approaching, no longer in the severe gallery attire, but dressed in the smart business casual that had become her signature as Horizon's newest cultural integration specialist. The past 6 months had transformed more than just her wardrobe. There was a confidence in her bearing that came from doing work aligned with her values. The interaction between the sculpture and the light is perfect, Elena agreed. Your suggestion to adjust the hanging height by 18 inches made all the difference. The architecture does the heavy lifting, Camille said with a smile. I just helped with the finishing touches. They stood in companionable silence, watching the early morning sun create new dimensions in the artwork. As employees began to filter into the building, many pausing to admire the installation. The board of directors is impressed, Elena said after a moment, not just with the art installation, but with the community outreach program you developed alongside it. Camille's cheeks colored slightly at the praise. The workshop series for local high school students has been the most rewarding part of this entire project. Seeing them respond to the art, create their own interpretations. It's everything I hoped to do when I studied art history. The student works displayed in the public plaza are garnering attention, Elena noted. The Chicago Tribune arts critic called it a revolutionary approach to corporate patronage of the arts. That's all because you took a chance on me, Camille said quietly. After I treated you so poorly that day at the gallery, Elena shook her head. I took a chance on your potential. You're the one who did the work to realize it. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of a small tour group, art students from a local community college, led by a familiar face. Jason, formerly of the Chicago Fine Arts Gallery, had found his own path forward, accepting a position as an educational coordinator at the Art Institute of Chicago while pursuing his own doctorate in art history. And this, he was saying to his students, is a perfect example of how architecture and art can enhance each other when conceived as an integrated experience rather than separate elements. He spotted Elena and Camille, and his face lit up with recognition. Perfect timing, students, we have a unique opportunity today. This is Elena Alvarez, the architect who designed this incredible building, and Camille Hartwell, who curated the art installation throughout the space. The students, a diverse group ranging in age from late teens to middle-aged adults, regarded them with evident interest. Elena always made time for students, remembering how valuable such interactions had been during her own education. Alvarez, said a young woman with vibrant blue hair and an earnest expression, your integration of indigenous design principles into contemporary architecture is revolutionary. How do you balance innovation with cultural respect? The question was thoughtful and specific. Clearly, this student had done her research. Elena launched into an explanation of her collaborative approach, the importance of community involvement, and the principle that guided all her work. That architecture should serve the people who inhabit it, not the ego of the architect who designed it. As the impromptu discussion unfolded, Elena noticed a young man at the back of the group, hanging slightly apart from the others. He was dressed in clothing that had seen better days, jeans with worn knees, a faded t-shirt, scuffed boots. While the other students took notes on tablets or smartphones, he was sketching rapidly in a tattered notebook, his eyes constantly moving between the building structure and his drawings. When the formal questions concluded and the students began to wander through the atrium, examining details more closely, Elena approached him. "May I see what you're working on?" she asked. The young man looked up, startled, and instinctively moved to close his notebook before catching himself. "It's just some rough sketches," he said, his voice carrying a slight accent she couldn't immediately place. "Nothing good. I'll be the judge of that," Elena said with a gentle smile. "I'm Elena Alvarez. I know who you are," he replied, then flushed slightly at how it sounded. "I mean, your work on sustainable urban development is why I applied to the program." "I'm Miguel Reyes." Hesitantly, he turned his notebook toward her. Elena found herself looking at remarkably skilled sketches of the atrium's structural elements, with particular attention to how the light interacted with the Richardson sculptures. But what caught her attention were the notes in the margins, mathematical calculations of load-bearing capacities, small modifications to enhance the interaction between light and form, insights that demonstrated not just artistic sensibility but engineering acumen. "These are exceptional," she said honestly. "You have a natural understanding of structural dynamics." Miguel shrugged, clearly uncomfortable with the praise. "I worked construction for 6 years before saving enough for community college. You learn a lot about how buildings actually work when you're helping build them." Elena nodded, remembering her own early days spending summers as a laborer on her father's construction sites, learning the practical realities that would later inform her designs. "Where are you hoping to take your education?" she asked. "Architecture program at UIC, if I can get in," Miguel replied. "Scholarships are competitive though, and I'm still catching up on the formal academic requirements." Elena glanced at Jason, who had moved closer during their conversation. "Jason, does the Art Institute still partner with Horizon on the Emerging Artists Residency Program?" "Absolutely," Jason confirmed. "The selection committee is meeting next month for the fall cohort. I'd like Miguel to be considered," Elena said. His work shows exactly the kind of integrated thinking between art and structure that the program was designed to nurture. Jason's eyebrows rose as he looked at Miguel's sketches. "These are impressive. We'd need a formal portfolio submission, of course, but I'd be happy to help with the application process." Miguel looked between them, his expression a mixture of hope and suspicion. "Why would you do that? You don't even know me." "I know your work," Elena said simply. "And I know what it's like to have people make assumptions based on appearances rather than potential." She handed him a card. "My personal email is on there. Send me your portfolio, and we'll take it from there." As the tour group prepared to leave, Miguel carefully tucked the card into his notebook, his movements suggesting he was handling something precious. "Thank you," he said quietly. "I won't waste this opportunity." "See that you don't," Elena replied with a smile. "Talent deserves cultivation, regardless of what package it comes in." After the students departed, Camille rejoined her. "That was generous of you." "It was pragmatic," Elena corrected. "Talent like that shouldn't be lost because of financial barriers or preconceptions about who belongs in architecture." They began walking toward Elena's office, passing through the gallery space where the other Richardson pieces were displayed alongside works by emerging artists, a visual dialogue between established voices and new perspectives. "Speaking of preconceptions," Camille said hesitantly, "I heard that Marcus Wellington is leaving the Chicago Fine Arts Gallery." Elena raised an eyebrow. "Oh, The board voted to restructure after several high-profile clients followed your lead and took their business elsewhere. Apparently, your experience wasn't an isolated incident. I'm sorry to hear that, Elena said, and found that she meant it. Despite our rocky start, the gallery represents important artists. That's just it, Camille replied. The board has appointed a new director, Angela Kim. She was a curator at the MCA, known for her community outreach programs and commitment to diverse voices in art. Her first initiative is a partnership with Chicago Public Schools to provide art education resources and exhibition opportunities. Elena smiled, recognizing the positive ripple effects spreading outward from what had initially been a painful experience. Change comes in unexpected ways sometimes. It does, Camille agreed. Which reminds me, the community workshop series has been so successful that we've received inquiries from 3 other cities where Horizon has developments. Tokyo, Santiago, and Toronto all want to implement similar programs. Draft a proposal for scaling the initiative, Elena said, her mind already considering the possibilities. We'll need to adapt for cultural contexts, but the core principle should translate well. Art as community conversation rather than corporate decoration. They reached Elena's office, a light-filled space with glass walls that kept her connected to the building she had designed while providing the quiet necessary for focused work. On her desk sat a small, unassuming sculpture, a gift from her father when the headquarters had officially opened 3 months ago. Its simple form, carved from the same stone used in Horizon's first building, bore an inscription in Spanish, "Judged by what is built, not by who builds it." "We'll have the board meeting at 11, Camille reminded her. "Do you want me to prepare anything specific for the cultural initiatives portion? Bring the data on community engagement metrics and the press coverage of the student exhibition," Elena decided. "And Camille, include Miguel's sketches in the presentation on emerging talent. Let the board see what we might have missed if we only looked for potential in traditional places." After Camille left, Elena turned to her computer, pulling up the latest designs for Horizon's next major project, a mixed-use development in Detroit designed to revitalize a neglected neighborhood while preserving its cultural heritage. The challenges were significant, but so was the potential impact. Her phone buzzed with a message from her father. "Quarterly numbers are excellent. Board is impressed with headquarters reception. You free for dinner tonight?" Elena smiled, typing back, "Wouldn't miss it. Bringing designs for Detroit and maybe a candidate for our internship program." Rafael's response was immediate, "Another stray with hidden potential." "Something like that," Elena replied. "I'll tell you over dinner." Setting her phone aside, Elena returned to her work, the morning sun creating patterns of light and shadow across her desk, a reminder that perspectives could shift with time and illumination. The building around her, the art within it, the people whose lives intersected with hers, all were part of a larger structure she was helping to create, one where value was measured not by appearances but by contribution. It was, she reflected, the most important design of all. 3 years later, Elena stood at the edge of a construction site in Detroit, watching as the final structural elements of Horizon's Renaissance Commons project were put into place. What had once been a neglected industrial area was transforming into a vibrant mixed-use development that preserved the neighborhood's architectural heritage while creating new spaces for living, working, and community gathering. The morning air was crisp with early autumn, the sky a clear blue that highlighted the warm tones of the reclaimed brick and sustainable materials that defined the project's aesthetic. Elena pulled her jacket closer, taking in the busy activity of the construction team as they worked with practiced efficiency. "Ms. Alvarez?" Elena turned to see Miguel Reyes approaching, no longer the hesitant student she had met in Chicago, but a confident young professional in his final year of architecture school. The Horizon internship had evolved into a part-time position that allowed him to apply his studies directly to real-world projects, and his contributions to the Detroit development had been substantial. "The modified atrium design is working perfectly," he reported, tablet in hand. "The light studies were accurate. We're getting exactly the illumination pattern we projected for the community art space." Elena nodded with satisfaction. "And the acoustic adjustments, even better than expected," Miguel confirmed. "The performance area can switch between intimate acoustic settings and larger amplified events with minimal technological intervention, just as you envisioned." They walked together through the site, Miguel pointing out various features that had evolved from their initial designs through the collaborative process that had become Horizon's signature approach. "The community input sessions were the key," he said, indicating a series of outdoor gathering spaces that had been redesigned based on residents' feedback. "When people told us how they actually used public spaces versus how we assumed they would, it changed everything." "That's always the case," Elena agreed. Architecture isn't just about imposing a vision, it's about creating spaces that serve the people who will inhabit them. They reached the centerpiece of the development, a former machine shop that had been transformed into a light-filled market and cultural center. The original industrial character had been preserved, with massive steel beams and soaring ceilings, but now clerestory windows brought natural light deep into the space. The installation team arrives next week, Miguel said, consulting his tablet. Camille has finalized the selection of local artists for the inaugural exhibition. Elena smiled, thinking of how far Camille had come from their first encounter at the Chicago Fine Arts Gallery. Now director of cultural integration for all of Horizon's North American projects, she had built a department dedicated to meaningful connections between architecture, art, and community. Elena Alvarez. Miguel's voice pulled her from her thoughts. There's someone here to see you. A gallery owner from New York who's interested in the art initiative component of the project. Elena followed Miguel's gesture and saw a woman waiting near the site entrance, elegantly dressed in the unmistakable style of the New York art world, her posture suggesting someone accustomed to commanding attention. Sophia Winters, Miguel supplied, apparently one of the most influential gallerists in Manhattan. She's interested in adapting our community arts model for a development in Harlem. Interesting, Elena murmured. Let's see what she has to say. As they approached, Sophia Winters straightened, extending a manicured hand. Elena Alvarez, thank you for making time for me. Your work here is remarkable, a true integration of social responsibility and design excellence. Thank you, Elena replied, noting the woman's firm handshake and direct gaze. Miguel tells me you're interested in our community arts initiative. Very much so, Sophia confirmed. The Winter Gallery is partnering with developers in Harlem on a project that aims to preserve the neighborhood's cultural heritage while creating economic opportunities. Your model of community engagement is exactly what we've been searching for. Elena gestured toward the market building. We were just about to review the exhibition space. Would you care to join us? It might give you a better sense of how we approach the integration of art and architecture. I'd be delighted, Sophia said, falling into step beside them. As they walked, Sophia asked thoughtful questions about the development's history and design philosophy. Unlike many from the commercial art world, she seemed genuinely interested in the community impact rather than just the aesthetic or investment aspects. Inside the market building, the transformation was even more evident. What had once been a gritty industrial space was now filled with light, the original architectural elements highlighted rather than concealed. Construction workers moved purposefully through the space, installing fixtures and finishing interior elements. The exhibition area will be there, Miguel explained, indicating a flexible space near the building's heart, designed to showcase rotating works by local artists alongside established names, creating dialogue between different perspectives. And the proceeds from sales are split between the artists and a fund for arts education in Detroit public schools. Elena added, it's not just about displaying art in a development, it's about creating a sustainable ecosystem for cultural production. Sophia nodded, her expression thoughtful. It's ambitious. Many have tried similar models, but few have succeeded in creating something that truly benefits the community rather than just paying lip service to inclusion. The difference is in the details, Elena said, and in who has a seat at the table when decisions are made. We involve local artists and community leaders from the very beginnings, not as an afterthought. As Miguel excused himself to address a question from the construction team, Sophia turned to Elena with a more direct gaze. I'll be honest, Ms. Alvarez, when I heard about Horizon's approach, I was skeptical. Too often, corporate involvement in the arts is superficial, a way to appear socially conscious while still prioritizing profit above all else. A fair concern? Elena acknowledged. What changed your mind? I spoke with artists who've worked with you, Sophia said, and with community organizations in Chicago and Toronto where you've implemented similar programs. They all said the same thing: Horizon actually listens. You adapt to what communities need, not what looks good in a corporate report. Elena smiled. That's perhaps the best compliment our work could receive. They continued through the space, discussing the practical aspects of implementing a similar model in Harlem. As they talked, Elena found herself warming to Sophia's evident passion for art as a vehicle for community empowerment rather than just a commodity. Their tour was interrupted by a commotion at the building's entrance. A group of well-dressed individuals had arrived, led by an older man whose bearing suggested authority and impatience in equal measure. That's Frederick Hamilton, Sophia murmured, the developer behind the Harlem project I mentioned. I didn't expect him to join us today. Frederick Hamilton surveyed the space with the calculating eye of someone assessing value rather than appreciating design. When his gaze landed on Elena and Sophia, he moved toward them with purpose, flanked by what appeared to be assistants and associates. "Sophia, there you are," he called, his voice carrying easily across the space. "I decided to see this Detroit project for myself before committing to any partnerships." As the group reached them, Sophia made introductions. "Frederick, this is Elena Alvarez, Chief Creative Officer of Horizon Global and the architect behind this development." Frederick gave Elena a cursory glance, his expression dismissive as he took in her practical work attire, jeans, boots, and a simple blazer appropriate for a construction site. "Charmed," he said perfunctorily before turning back to Sophia. "Where's the principal architect? I'd like to discuss the structural elements before we consider adapting any of this for our Harlem development." A familiar weight settled in Elena's stomach, but years of experience had taught her how to respond to such assumptions. Before Sophia could correct him, Elena extended her hand directly into Frederick's line of sight. "As Sophia mentioned, I'm Elena Alvarez, the principal architect for Renaissance Commons and Horizon's Chief Creative Officer. I designed the structural elements you're referring to, so I'd be happy to discuss them in detail." Frederick blinked, momentarily thrown off balance. He took her hand automatically, his handshake noticeably less firm than it had been with Sophia. "You're the architect," he repeated, making no effort to hide his surprise. "I was expecting," he trailed off, apparently realizing there was no way to complete that sentence without revealing his bias. "You were expecting someone who looks different," Elena finished for him, her tone professional but with an edge of challenge. "Perhaps someone older, male? Less Hispanic?" Frederick had the grace to look slightly uncomfortable. "I apologize if I gave that impression. It's just that Horizon has a reputation for innovative structural engineering, and you seem rather young to have that level of expertise." Sophia stepped in smoothly. "Elena is widely recognized as one of the most innovative architects working today, Frederick's. Her integration of sustainable practices with community-centered design is precisely why I suggested Horizon as a potential partner for the Harlem project." Elena could see the calculations happening behind Frederick's eyes, the adjustment of assumptions, the recalibration of his approach now that he understood her position. "Well then," he said, his tone warming artificially, "I look forward to hearing your thoughts on how your model might translate to our development. Perhaps over lunch. I have a reservation at the best restaurant in Detroit. I appreciate the invitation," Elena replied, "but I have a full schedule today, including a community feedback session this afternoon that's critical to our final design adjustments." She gestured toward the construction site visible through the windows. "However, I'd be happy to give you a comprehensive tour of the development now, so you can see firsthand how our architectural and cultural integration approach works in practice." Frederick seemed taken aback by her refusal of his lunch invitation, but he recovered quickly. Of course, a tour would be most informative. As they moved through the space, Elena provided detailed explanations of the design principles and community engagement processes that had shaped the development. She was professional and thorough, refusing to either overcompensate for Frederick's initial dismissal or allow it to diminish her authority. Miguel rejoined them, adding insights about the technical aspects of the implementation. Elena noticed with pride how confidently he engaged with the visitors, his knowledge evident in his detailed responses to their questions. When they reached the community arts space, Frederick's interest visibly increased. "The financial model for this is what intrigues me," he admitted. "How do you balance the community benefit with the need for profitability?" "That's the wrong framing," Elena replied candidly. "We don't see community benefit and profitability as opposing forces that need to be balanced. Our experience across multiple developments has shown that meaningful community integration actually enhances long-term value, both financially and socially." She pulled up data on her tablets, showing the performance metrics from their Chicago and Toronto developments. Tenant retention is higher, commercial spaces maintain better occupancy rates, and the developments become cultural destinations that draw visitors and support local businesses. Frederick studied the numbers with evident interest. "These results are impressive," he acknowledged, "significantly better than industry standards for mixed-use developments." "Because we're not just building structures," Elena said. "We're cultivating ecosystems where people want to live, work, and engage with their community." As the tour concluded, Frederick's demeanor had shifted noticeably. The initial dismissiveness had been replaced by a grudging respect, evident in the way he addressed his questions directly to Elena rather than deferring to his associates or to Sophia. "Ms. Alvarez," he said as they reached the site entrance, "I appreciate your taking the time to show us your work here. It's given me much to consider regarding our approach to the Harlem development." "I'm glad to hear that," Elena replied sincerely. "Whatever direction you choose to take, I hope you'll center the needs and perspectives of the community you're entering. That's the foundation of any truly successful development. Frederick nodded, handing her his business card. I'd like to continue this conversation. Perhaps next time you're in New York. I'll be there next month for a conference, Elena said. My assistant will be in touch to arrange a meeting. As Frederick and his entourage departed, Sophia lingered behind. I should apologize for Frederick's initial behavior, she said quietly. Elena shook her head. You're not responsible for his assumptions. No. But I could have been clearer in my communications with him about who you are and what you've accomplished. Sophia admitted. I suspect I unconsciously didn't emphasize your role because I wanted him to experience your work without preconceptions. And how did that work out? Elena asked with a small smile. Sophia laughed softly. Better than I anticipated, actually. I've rarely seen Frederick Hamilton so quickly reevaluate his position. You made quite an impression. The work speaks for itself, Elena said simply. That's always been my approach. Let the results challenge whatever assumptions people might make based on appearance. A philosophy more should adopt, Sophia agreed. Thank you for today. It's been enlightening in more ways than one. After Sophia departed, Miguel rejoined Elena as they headed toward the temporary offices set up at the edge of the site. That was impressive, he said. The way you handled Hamilton. Elena glanced at him. It shouldn't have to be impressive for someone to do their job without having to overcome biased assumptions. True, Miguel acknowledged. But it still was. You didn't get defensive or confrontational, but you didn't let him off the hook either. Practice, Elena said with a slight shrug. And perspective, his assumption about me was annoying, but it wasn't a barrier to my livelihood or safety. Many face much worse every day. They reached the office trailer where the afternoon community feedback session would be held. Already, local residents and business owners were arriving, greeted by Horizon team members who knew many of them by name after months of collaborative planning. Among them, Elena spotted a familiar face, an older woman named Rose Washington who owned a soul food restaurant that had been a neighborhood institution for decades. Rose had been initially skeptical of the development, fearful it would lead to the kind of gentrification that had displaced so many Black-owned businesses in other cities. Now, Rose was one of the project's most vocal supporters, having worked closely with the design team to ensure the development preserved the neighborhood's cultural heritage while creating new opportunities for longtime residents. Elena Alvarez, Rose called, waving her over. I brought sketches from my grandson for the youth art wall. That boy hasn't stopped drawing since you told him artists come in all ages. Elena smiled, remembering the shy 10-year-old who had attended a community meeting with his grandmother, clutching a sketchbook but too timid to share his work until Elena had specifically asked to see it. I can't wait to see what he's created, she said sincerely. The youth art wall is going to be one of the development's most important features. As they entered the meeting space, Elena took a moment to observe the gathering, a diverse group of stakeholders united by their connection to this place and their investment in its future. Some, like Rose, had initially approached the development with wariness born from historical experiences of being excluded or harmed by such projects. Others had been cautiously optimistic from the start. What united them now was a sense of ownership in the process and trust that their voices were genuinely valued. It hadn't been easy to build that trust. It had required consistent follow-through, transparency about constraints, and the humility to admit when the design team had missed something important. Miguel handed Elena the updated presentation materials for the session, his expression thoughtful. You know, when you first offered me that internship 3 years ago, I thought it was some kind of elaborate test, that you'd find out I wasn't really architect material and rescind the offer. Elena recalled the suspicious expression on his face when she had proposed helping with his application. And now I understand why you did it, he said. Because someone once saw past appearances to recognize your potentials, and you wanted to do the same for others. My father, Elena confirmed. He was the one who encouraged me to pursue architecture when everyone else said I should consider something more suitable for a girl who was good at math. Her mestra. Alvarez is a wise, Miguel said with a smile. He is? Elena agreed. And he'd be the first to say that wisdom comes from challenging your own assumptions rather than reinforcing them. She gestured toward the gathering community members. That's what today is about, checking our assumptions against lived experiences, making sure the designs we think will work actually serve the people who will use them. As they prepared to begin the session, Elena's phone buzzed with a message from her father. Detroit project looking excellent from the progress reports. Board is impressed with community integration metrics. How's our young architect doing? Elena glanced at Miguel, who was confidently greeting community members and setting up the presentation materials. Exceeding all expectations, she typed back, "Just as I predicted." Rafael's response came quickly, "Good eye, as always." "Not just for buildings, but for people?" Elena smiled, putting her phone away as she prepared to welcome the attendees. The work of challenging assumptions, both others and her own, was never finished. But each project, each interaction, was an opportunity to create spaces where people could be seen for their true worth rather than judged by superficial appearances. It wasn't just good architecture. It was the foundation of a more just world. And that, Elena reflected as she stepped forward to begin the meeting, was the most meaningful structure she could help build.